They were still 200 yards from the beach when the ramp dropped. The men in front went into water over their heads and didn't come up. The men behind them stepped out after them anyway, because the ramp was down and the Germans were firing and there was nowhere else to go except forward, through water that was already turning red, toward a beach that offered no cover, toward bluffs from which machine guns were firing with the methodical efficiency of a factory. This was Omaha Beach. June 6, 1944. 6:30 in the morning. Steven Spielberg's film begins here, and nothing in cinema has captured those first minutes more accurately. But a film is 2 hours. The real day was 24 hours. And inside the chaos of that day were individual stories of men doing things so extraordinary that they defined the outcome of the entire war. This is the story of the real soldiers of D-Day. Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France, was the largest amphibious assault in history. It would involve nearly 7,000 vessels, 12,000 aircraft, and 156,000 men crossing the English Channel in a single day to storm a heavily defended coastline. The planning had taken years and consumed some of the finest military minds the Allies possessed. The deception campaign, Operation Bodyguard, had convinced the Germans that the real invasion was coming at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy, and Hitler's insistence on holding his panzer reserves back from the beaches on D-Day reflected this deception's success. But plans and deception could only do so much. On Omaha Beach, a 5-mile crescent of sand below 100-foot bluffs, assigned to the American 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, almost everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The preliminary naval and aerial bombardment missed the German defensive positions entirely, most of it overshooting into farmland behind the bluffs. The specialized tanks designed to support the infantry were launched too far offshore and most sank before they reached the beach. The landing craft drifted east, dropping units into the wrong positions. And the German division defending Omaha, the 352nd Infantry, was a battle-hardened unit that American intelligence hadn't known was there. By 8 in the morning, the assault on Omaha Beach was failing. The film focuses on Army Rangers. This is accurate. The 2nd Ranger Battalion had been assigned to one of the most critical missions of the entire invasion, Pointe du Hoc. Pointe du Hoc is a promontory of rock projecting into the channel between Omaha and Utah beaches, rising about 100 feet above the waterline in sheer chalk cliffs. Allied aerial reconnaissance had identified a battery of 6 155mm guns at its summit guns that could destroy the invasion fleet. The Rangers were ordered to climb the cliffs under fire, take the battery, and destroy the guns before they could be used. Colonel James Earl Rudder commanded the 2nd Rangers at Pointe du Hoc. He was 34 years old, from Texas, a former football coach who had gotten into the Army by faking his age. He was also, by most accounts, one of the finest small unit commanders in the American Army. When the landing craft touched the base of the cliffs at 7:08 in the morning, more than 40 minutes late, after a navigation error had taken them along the French coast under fire, Rudder's men fired rocket grapnels up the cliff face and began to climb. Germans cut ropes. Rangers fell. Others grabbed the next rope and kept going. Within minutes, not the 30 or 40 that planners had estimated, the 1st Rangers were at the top. They fought hand-to-hand through the positions at the summit of the cliff. They found the gun positions empty. The guns themselves had been moved inland. Following tire tracks and telephone wire through the fields behind the promontory, a patrol of Rangers found the guns concealed in an orchard 200 meters from the road. They destroyed them with thermite grenades. The mission was accomplished. Pointe du Hoc was taken. But the Rangers at the top of the cliff were surrounded, cut off from reinforcement, and under repeated counterattack. Of the 225 men who had scaled the cliff, only 90 were still able to fight after 2 days of holding the position. They held it until the main American advance reached them. The first man to reach the top of Pointe du Hoc was not in the film. His name was Sergeant Len Lomell. When the patrol found the guns in the orchard, it was Lomell who carried the thermite grenades and destroyed 2 of them before his supply ran out, then sent his partner Staff Sergeant Jack Kuhn back for more to finish the job. He was 24 years old. On Omaha Beach, by mid-morning, the situation was critical. Dead and wounded lay at the waterline where the tide was pushing them. Survivors crouched behind the few obstacles that offered cover. Concrete blocks, iron hedgehogs, the bodies of the fallen. German machine guns in concrete emplacements raked the beach systematically. Brigadier General Norman Cota arrived on the beach at around 7:30 and walked through the fire upright, which was either extraordinary leadership or recklessness. The line between these things in combat is often the outcome. He is the template for the character Tom Hanks plays, the combat leader who holds the thing together when it's falling apart. Cota found Rangers pinned behind a seawall and reportedly said, "Rangers, lead the way," the line that became the official motto of the Ranger Regiment. Whether the exact phrase was said exactly there is debated by historians. What is not debated is what Cota did. He moved through the beach, identified gaps in the German wire, pushed men through them, organized the first assault on the bluffs, and turned what was close to a disaster into a breakthrough. By afternoon, American soldiers were on top of the bluffs. The cost was roughly 2,000 American casualties on Omaha Beach on June 6 alone. The exact number is still debated. The records are incomplete because of the chaos of the day. Some estimates put it higher. The premise of the film, pulling a soldier from the front to bring him home because his brothers have been killed, is based on a real story. The Niland brothers were 4 sons from Tonawanda, New York: Frederick, Edward, Preston, and Robert. On D-Day, Robert Niland was killed at Utah Beach with the 82nd Airborne. On the same day, Preston Niland was killed in Burma. Edward Niland, who had been missing, was believed dead. He was actually a prisoner of war in Japan, a fact his family didn't know. That left Frederick, Fritz, as the apparent sole survivor of 4 brothers who had all entered service. An army chaplain named Father Francis Sampson tracked down Fritz's regiment and passed the information up the chain. Fritz was found, pulled from the line, and sent home. The actual encounter was less dramatic than the film. There was no sustained combat mission to reach Fritz. His company commander informed him he was being sent back. He argued against it briefly, was overruled, and left. He returned home to Tonawanda. He attended the reunion when Edward turned up alive after the war. He outlived everyone. He died in 1999, the same year Saving Private Ryan was released. Spielberg's film is not a documentary. Characters are composites. The plot is invented. The specific mission, a squad crossing Normandy to find one man, did not happen in anything like the form shown. But the texture of the film is accurate in ways that matter. The sound design was drawn from veterans' accounts. The tactics, the way units moved, communicated, processed casualties, were researched from military records. The German defensive positions, the hedgerow fighting, the equipment, the attention to period accuracy is significant. Most importantly, the first 27 minutes, the Omaha Beach sequence, was reviewed by actual veterans and military historians as the most accurate cinematic depiction of that specific experience ever committed to film. Veterans who had been there said they couldn't watch it. That is a specific kind of accuracy. What the film cannot show, what no film can, is the accumulation. 2,000 men on one beach on one day. 6,000 Allied dead in a day. 156,000 men crossing a channel, most of them knowing some significant percentage of them would not come back. The real D-Day was not the story of one squad. It was the simultaneous story of 100,000 individual acts, of men who were afraid and went anyway, who were hit and kept moving, who went back for their friend when going back meant almost certain death. Normandy today has 41 cemeteries and memorials, containing the graves of soldiers from 14 nations. The American Cemetery at Colleville-sur-Mer, above Omaha Beach, contains 9,387 graves arranged in perfect rows facing west toward home. Among them are men who died before they reached the beach, men who died on the sand, men who made it to the top of the bluffs and died the next day or the day after that in the hedgerows and villages of Normandy. And among them, somewhere in the record, are the names that became the composites of the men in the film: the Rangers of the 2nd Battalion, the soldiers of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, the paratroopers of the 82nd and 101st Airborne, the men of the Niland family and the 10,000 families like them. The film exists. The graves exist too. Both are worth visiting. But it is the graves that tell the true story. If this story moved you, subscribe to follow the Untold front. New stories every week.